Dr. Nicolas Leon was a man possessed. He was an anthropologist and historian driven by an insatiable curiosity. His life's work to uncover the forgotten stories of Mexico's indigenous people. Leon was particularly drawn to the period of the Spanish conquest. He believed that the conquest was not simply a victory for the Spanish, but a complex and tragic clash of civilizations. Leon felt a deep empathy for the indigenous people. He saw them not as vanquished foes but as victims of a brutal system. He dedicated his life to giving them back their voice. He sought to tell their story, a story often lost in the shadow of the victors. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived on the shores of Mexico. He came with conquistadors driven by greed and a thirst for gold. They encountered the Aztec Empire, a sophisticated civilization with impressive cities and a rich culture. Cortés, through a combination of cunning, ruthlessness, and sheer luck, managed to topple the Aztec Empire. The fall of the Aztecs marked the beginning of Spanish rule in Mexico. It was a period of profound change and upheaval. The Spanish imposed their language, religion, and customs on the native population. Millions of indigenous people were enslaved, forced to work in mines and on plantations. Perhaps the most devastating consequence of the conquest was the introduction of European diseases. Smallpox, measles, and influenza swept through the indigenous population. These diseases were new to the Americas. The native population had no immunity. The death toll was staggering. Some historians estimate that as much as 90% of the indigenous population perished in the century following the conquest. Entire villages were wiped out. A civilization that had thrived for centuries was brought to the brink of collapse. Despite the horrors of the conquest, the indigenous people of Mexico never surrendered their identity. They resisted the Spanish in countless ways, both big and small. There were armed uprisings, acts of sabotage, and quiet defiance of Spanish laws and customs. The indigenous people clung to their languages, their traditions, and their beliefs. They passed down their stories from generation to generation, keeping their culture alive in the face of immense pressure to assimilate. This resilience, this refusal to be erased, is a testament to the strength and spirit of the indigenous people. Dr. Nicolas Leon understood the importance of these stories. He knew that the history of the conquered is often told by the conquerors. He sought out primary sources, painstakingly piecing together the fragments of a shattered past. He listened to the whispers of the ancestors in ancient codices, in archaeological ruins, and in the oral traditions passed down through generations. He unearthed forgotten accounts, translated ancient texts, and interviewed elders in remote villages. His work was not just academic, it was an act of recovery, of giving voice to the voiceless. He knew that to understand Mexico, one must understand the history of its indigenous people. The legacy of Dr. Leon. Dr. Leon's work was groundbreaking. He challenged the traditional narratives of the conquest. He showed the devastating impact of Spanish colonialism on the indigenous population. His research helped to shed light on a period of history that had been largely ignored. His legacy continues to inspire scholars and activists today. He reminds us that history is not just about the powerful and the victorious, it is also about the struggles and triumphs of ordinary people. Uncovering hidden truths. The story of Dr. Nicolas Leon is a reminder of the importance of seeking out the lost narratives of history. It is a call to look beyond the official versions of events, and to listen to the voices of those who have been silenced. The Spanish conquest was a tragedy for the indigenous people of Mexico, yet it is also a story of resilience, of cultural survival, and of the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a story that deserves to be told and remembered. A shared history. The legacy of the conquest continues to shape Mexico today. The country is home to a rich tapestry of cultures, a blend of indigenous and Spanish influences. Understanding the history of the conquest is essential to understanding modern Mexican identity. It is a reminder of the importance of respecting and celebrating cultural diversity. It also highlights the need for reconciliation and understanding between different cultural groups. A call to remember. As we move further away from the events of the conquest, it becomes even more important to remember the stories of the indigenous people who endured it. We must honor their memory by acknowledging their suffering, celebrating their resilience, and learning from their history. Dr. Nicolas dedicated his life to uncovering these stories. His work stands as a testament to the power of historical truth, and a call to action for all of us to seek out and amplify the voices of the forgotten.